Hello! Today, let's read an article. Let's read an article from the nationalgeographic.com. Basically, I just copy this into Notion so that I can make some comments to learn something from this article. So let's do it together. Okay. Today's article is Do Bees Play? A groundbreaking study says yes. Sounds interesting. Along the way, we'll learn some words and not dive deep into the content, but just try to understand it as much as you can, okay? And I'm so grateful for Sophia Quailia for writing this. Many animals like to play, often for no other apparent reason than enjoyment. Pet owners know this is true for cats, dogs, even rodents. And scientists have observed the same in some fish, frogs, lizards, and birds. But what about insects? Are their minds and lives rich enough to make room for play? Okay, so just pause a bit and look at this. Many animals like to play, often for no other apparent reason than enjoyment. This is equivalent to the sentence like it is obvious for many animals to like to play. And the obvious reason is because they enjoy themselves. So we have this apparent. Apparent means something like obvious. Oh, obvious, like this. Or maybe I should do the whole thing and then comment it. It is obvious. They have the same purpose to say so. For no other apparent reason than enjoyment. Okay. So here they say that animals like to play because they enjoy themselves, and they have a question right at the end of the paragraphs. What about insects? And this question indicates that the question a question is raised up. Are their minds and lives rich enough to make room for play? It's like, are the minds and do insects have rich lives, rich minds with creativity and cognition? Is it good enough to play? Because here in this article, they refer play as a complex set of behaviors, of activities. Play is very complex in this article, and in real life too. Being able to play is not a thing that is obvious for every living things in the world, okay? Okay, next. New research published in the journal Animal Behavior suggests that bumblebees seem to enjoy rolling around wooden balls without being trained or receiving rewards, presumably just because it's fun. So overall, this article is about a new research and experiment they have carried out to learn about animal behavior, specifically bumblebees. And they have a conclusion like this. In this sentence, we have this word, presumably. So, presumably, it means like it's probably true, like it's a guess. It's a guess that based on some evidence they have shown or they have concluded after a series of research, something like that. So we may comment it and say it's probably true, okay? So they make a guess. They have a guesswork, and it's probably true that bumblebees seem to enjoy rolling around wooden balls, and they guess that it's fun. It's probably true that because it's fun. Okay. I hope it makes sense. It shows that bees are not little robots that just respond to stimuli, and they do carry out activities that might be pleasurable, says lead author Samadi Galpayaj, a researcher at the Queen Mary University of London. So this research, is being researched, was researched at the University of London here, Queen Mary University of London. Yeah. Bees are not little robots that just respond to stimuli. This indicates that right now we see it is not really a fact, but kinda like a fact, and we're trying to dive deep more if it's true or not. That insects have emotions or not, or they are just little robots that they respond to stimuli. Stimuli here is like their environment. They just a robot who's programmed to do the things that they've been programmed to do, and not other things like playing themselves, or playing and creative activities like us, writing a story or maybe drawing like that. These findings add to growing evidence that bees are more complex than previously thought. If they're playing solely for fun, enjoyment, and pleasure, that also raises important questions about what feelings they experience and if they can be considered sentient. So here we have this word solely. Solely means only. So if they're playing solely for fun means if they're playing only for fun. So the only purpose of them playing is just for fun, and solely has that meaning. Solely means only. So we have, you may hear a sole purpose. Oh, where is it? Here it is. Oh no. A sole purpose, like this. That means it has only one purpose. Something has a sole purpose, like you can say a pen has a sole purpose of serving us to write. That's just a silly example of mine, but you can make yours more interesting. And this word, sentient. So if they can be considered sentient here, it means that if bees are considered sentient. Sentient means conscious, like they have consciousness, awareness of their surroundings, of their environment, of things around them, that they have an understanding of their surroundings. They know that A is A and B is B, or they know that 1 plus 1 is 2, something like that. We have consciousness. We know, or at least we know something that is happening around us. I know right now the sun is shining. The sun is shining at my desk right now. That's consciousness. Bees may have consciousness, may not, we don't know, or we have not known exactly yet. So sentient, let's just say it's conscious here. Okay? Having a ball. This is kind of like the experiment. Buff-tailed bumblebees, Bombus terrestris audax, are one of the most common species of bumblebees in Europe, often found in parks, gardens, and used to pollinate greenhouses. Yet, these fuzzy, buzzing insects are known to science as tiny social creatures with surprisingly expansive cognitive abilities. In 2017, scientists at the Queen Mary University of London conducted research showing that bees can also be taught to play soccer, scoring a goal with small wooden balls in return for a reward. Okay, here we see two adjectives that are very great, that are great for describing bees, fuzzy and buzzing. Buzzing, you can imagine them bees making buzzing sounds like buzz, buzz. When you have a bees near you, you can hear their sounds of the wings that they make. Buzz, buzz, buzz. That's why we call them buzzing insects. And fuzzy here refers to their hairs, the short hairs that they have on their body. So fuzzy, buzzing insects. Okay. And another word here, conducted research. People use conduct usually with research. To conduct research is to carry out the research. They put it in experiment. They put it in action. Right? During this project, the scholars realized some of the bumblebees on the sidelines seemed to enjoy rolling around the balls for no obvious reason or benefit. To test the hypothesis that bees were doing this for fun, Galpage carried out a couple of experiments. In one, 45 bumblebees were placed in an arena connected to a separate feeding area by a path surrounded by 18 colorful wooden balls. The route was unobstructed, but the bees could deviate from their lane and interact with the yellow, purple, and plain wooden balls over the course of 3 hours every day. For 18 days, the balls were glued to the ground on one side of the path and were mobile on the other. Here, we have this description of the arena that bumblebees were placed in. The arena was connected to a separate feeding area, blah, blah, blah. Here, right here. Sometimes you need to read again to understand or just imagine the picture more clearly. And that's okay, because it helps us to imagine it, imagine the picture, get a clear idea of the arena that the other is trying to describe. I have to take my time to read it again too, to understand the picture. And this word, unobstructed, when you say a route is unobstructed, that means it has almost no obstacle in their way. It is very open and not blocked by anything. You can say unobstructed view. That means when, for example, you're in a hotel room and you have a window view that is so spectacular. You have a whole view of the beach without anything blocking the view, without any other hotels on your way or any trees that block your view. That is unobstructed view. Similarly, a route that is unobstructed, nothing that blocks us from reaching our target, or nothing or no obstacles are on our way. So that's unobstructed. So let's comment it. It's open and not blocked by anything. You can say unobstructed view also. especially when you're on vacation and you get a nice window view of the hotel room. The bees could deviate from their lane. That means they get distracted by other things when they're in their lane heading to the feeding area right here. But they get distracted and they interact with the plain wooden balls. And here they have balls that were glued to the ground and then balls that were mobile, which means they were not glued to the ground. They can be moved freely on the floor. Okay. The bees, which were tagged according to age and gender, preferred the area with mobile balls, and they made the most of it. On several occasions, they were recorded rolling the balls around the arena floor with their bodies. Some bees did this only once. Others rolled balls 44 times during a single day, and one did so a whopping 117 times over the course of the study. So here we have this so good word. I mean, it sounds so good to my ears. Whopping. What do you think when you hear this word? When I first heard this word, I had a completely different definition of this word until I checked the meaning. So, whopping means that it's huge and maybe it's impressive, whether it's negative or positive. We usually refer this or take this word to go with number. See, 117 here. So whopping plus a number. We usually have that combination or that collocation. You can say the number of students of the school increases by a whopping 30% compared to last year. So whopping usually goes with numbers behind it. Or maybe some other examples that you should think by yourself, okay? Just connect it with some numbers and it is perfect. Okay, next. The fact that the bees continue to return to the balls and roll them suggests that there is something rewarding about it, says Galpage, who notes that there are hints of this bee play behavior because the data gathered matches trends found in other research on the subject. Male bees seem to play with the balls longer than females do, a pattern found in similar studies of vertebrates at play. Juvenile bees, younger than 3 days old, also roll the balls more than the bees older than 10 days of age. This too is in line with findings from the rest of the animal world. Here, they have this phrase. The data gathered matches trends found in other research on the subject. This means that the data from this research is kind of similar to the results of other research on the same subject. So, matches trends here means that it is similar to the patterns that has been found before, okay? And we see that meaning by reading this. A pattern found in similar studies here. And in line. In line means it is similar to something. It is like this too is in line with, that means this too is similar to this line. This too is like the findings, like it's similar, okay? You can also say the result is in line with my expectation. Yeah. It's a phrase that you can use a lot. It's an idiom. More play in younger individuals could be linked to preparing individuals for the world they find themselves in, as Elizabeth Franklin, a behavioral ecologist specializing in social insects at Cornwall College knew way, who was not involved in the study. And this part, the rules of play, mostly and mainly refers to why this experiment or this research means that bees have playing behavior. They prove that in this section. Let's read it together. According to scientific criteria, developed in part of Gordon Burghardt, an ethology researcher at the University of Tennessee, play should be voluntary, spontaneous, or rewarding in or of itself. The act of playing is a behavior that doesn't have any immediately obvious functionality, such as obtaining food, finding shelter, or mating. This paper includes one of the best experiments about animal play because it carefully tested all these metrics, says Burghardt, who wasn't involved in the study. For instance, in this experiment, ball rolling never resulted in the provision of food. The bees' nectar and pollen could be easily assessed in a separate room without ever having to interact with the balls. The bees never attempted to buy or extend the proboscis toward the balls in search of a sugary reward. Plus, most importantly, they came back to roll the ball one additional day or 2 different additional days, even after foraging. In nature, bees can be observed to stray away or stay away from the flowers that no longer give them a sugary reward. The bees didn't ever show their genitalia, suggesting that there were no attempts at mating, and they rolled the balls in all directions, indicating that they weren't trying to declutter their living space as they sometimes do. I think that it is amazing when you see the little bee on the ball. Burghardt says, laughing, if you saw this in another animal, you would have no problem calling it play. Okay, so this sentence at the end, you saw this in another animal, you would have no problem calling it play. This shows that playing behavior may be a common or basic behavior of other animals such as humans, like us, or mammals like lions or tigers. But if you see the playing behavior in bees or insects, for example, then you may be wondering if they have emotions or feelings or not. That's a question being raised. Okay? Let's go to the next session. That buzzing feeling. Burghardt believes that play is a complex set of behaviors that has evolved independently in many animals that may have multiple functions for their development. Creatures whose lives require fine-tuned motor skills to gather food are more likely to play with objects, according to research on non-human primates. And bumblebees do employ some impressive moves to pry open flowers and extract nectar and pollen, getting better over time. Here we see these fine-tuned motor skills. Creatures whose lives require fine-tuned motor skills. Fine-tuned here. Tune, this, T-U-N-E, means that you adjust the pitches of some musical instruments, such as piano, to achieve its precision so that you have the sounds that you want to hear. So to tune here, I hope that by saying that you can imagine the meaning of this word. fine-tuned, it's an adjective in this case, means that it is very precise. It is nearly almost perfect in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, or proficiency. So it is nearly perfect. You can imagine as that word. We can also use it as a verb, fine-tune, without a D, if it's not in the past tense. Fine-tune here, it's to make little, very little changes to something, to make it precise, to make it perfect. Yeah. So you can say a fine-tuned speech, a fine-tuned essay, and you can also say, I try to fine-tune this essay, even though that it feels very formal. It feels very big word, but fine-tune an essay, when you say it, you mean that you make very little changes to the essay that you write in order to feel more perfect, in order for you to feel that the essay is more complete. Okay? Fine-tuned motor skills. And about the words or the phrase motor skills, it's the skill of animals like humans to do very detailed and complicated actions. It's small actions, very detailed, but it needs a skill to do that. Specific skill to perform a certain task. Those tasks that requires great motor skills like drawing or writing. Yeah. In this specific experiment, the bumblebees didn't show any improvement in their ball handling abilities and didn't, for example, get quicker at ball rolling. Yet another suggestion they're doing it just for enjoyment. But future research could investigate whether bumblebees who roll balls around more frequently are more dexterous in their flower handling. So we have the word dexterous here. Dexterous. But when you want to be more natural and you say it quicker, you can say dexterous, like interesting. We don't want to spell very detailed, interesting, but interesting. This is similar. Dexterous, dexterous. Yeah, dexterous. Dexterous here means that you get better at something. In this case, more dexterous in flower handling. That means bees will get better at flower handling with more practice or with more time, and they'll get better. They'll get more dexterous in flower handling. Okay. Nevertheless, scholars remain divided. That means scholars or people who are highly educated still has controversy to a certain topic. They still have different opinions and very different perspectives on a subject as to whether playing as such has long-term adaptive benefits. That's the million-dollar question, and it's not for lack of trying, says Wolf-Dietmar Hutteroth, a researcher at Leipzig University in Germany who studies fruit fly behavior and was not involved in this research. Why do they do it, and what's the benefit? What's the adaptive value of the behavior? Here we have this. That's the million-dollar question. That means the question is very important to ask. The question is very important to be answered, and in many cases, this million-dollar question is very difficult to answer. But when maybe you're in an interview or a big interview and the interviewer asks you a question, or maybe just an acquaintance that you met on the road asks you a question that you really like, and then you say, "That's the million-dollar question. I'm gonna answer it." Okay. If the only reason for play is enjoyment, this means scientists have to start asking real questions about whether insects have feelings and therefore whether they are sentient. See that again? Sentient, conscious, remember. I think the evidence is quite clear, and yes, it points to a much richer world of feelings, of capabilities, not just to suffer, but also to enjoy things, says Lars Chitka, head of the Bee Research Laboratory at Queen Mary University and author of the book The Mind of a Bee. Research has also shown that fruit flies get scared and crayfish get anxious, and investigating play can widen the scope of how we understand insect cognition. In fact, these findings add to previous research by Chitka's lab, which had already demonstrated that bumblebees can experience something like positive emotions and optimism. A sugary treat can change bees' emotional state in a positive way, making them pursue a reward more quickly and more rapidly recover from scare. It's very humbling. It indicates that we as humans are only one of many thinking and enjoying suffering beings out there, Chitka says. It's a wow for me to read this article, and I'm very curious if in the future scientists may conclude that bees or any other insects have emotions and feelings or not. Maybe at that moment, I will speak to a bee and tell all my emotions out there. But by the way, get back to this phrase, widen the scope of how we understand insect cognition. Scope is a very beautiful word. Widen the scope in this case is to widen the understanding of how we understand insect cognition, widen the knowledge of how we understand it. Or more specifically, scope is like how widen or insight of this specific topic. So widen the scope, okay? I think that's it for today's, and I hope you have learned something, and if you want, you can read the articles and then talk to yourself like me. Pretend to teach someone and hoping that someone's have learned something. So thank you so much for listening, and see you later. Bye, have a nice day, and always stay true to yourself.